bless the great state of Iowa. Now, I'm thrilled to be back with so many dear friends. In particular, I'm thrilled how many pastors are here tonight. You know, pastors on Sunday, they'll often go back to the original Greek in Scripture. Well, if you look to the etymology of the word politics, it has two parts. Poly, meaning many, and ticks, meaning blood-sucking parasites. And that's a fairly accurate description of Washington, D.C. But you know, I want to give y'all a word of hope and encouragement. We understand our country's in crisis. We're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. Our constitutional rights are under assault from Washington like never before. And America is receding from leadership in the world. And yet what I want to tell you is America is waking up. We are seeing an awakening sweeping this country. And so I want everyone to look forward. I want to ask you to look forward to January 2017. If I am elected president, let me tell you what I intend to do on my first day in office.
Thank you, sir.
The first thing I intend to do in office is rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by this president. The second thing I intend to do on my first day in office is instruct the United States Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and these horrible videos. The third thing I intend to do on the first day in office is instruct the Department of Justice and the IRS and every other federal agency that the persecution of religious liberty ends today. Fourth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal. The fifth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is begin the process of moving the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital of Israel. That's day one. There are 365 days in a year. 4 years in a presidential term, and 4 years in a second term. By the end of 8 years, there are going to be a whole lot of newspaper reporters and editors and journalists who've checked themselves into therapy. In the days that follow, I will go to Congress and we will repeal every word of Obamacare. In the days that follow, I will instruct the Federal Department of Education, which should be abolished, I will instruct the Department of Education that Common Core ends today. In the days that follow, we will rebuild our military. We will honor the commitments made to every soldier and sailor and airman and Marine. Woo. And we will finally secure secure the borders and end sanctuary cities. In the days that follow, I will take on the EPA and the CFPB and the alphabet soup of federal regulators that are descended like locusts on small business, and we will unchain booming economic growth. And in the days that follow, I will go to Congress, and we will pass fundamental tax reform. We will pass a simple flat tax. Where every American can fill out his or her taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. Country comes from the men and women in this room. It comes from the grassroots. It comes from we, the people. We are seeing revival. We are seeing an awakening. And I promise you today, help is on the way.
First question is about life. President Cruz, we've all seen the videos, the Planned Parenthood videos. What is President Cruz going to do to stop the funding of that kind of activity?
Well, Kane, thank you for that question. As I said, on the first day, I will instruct the Department of Justice to open an investigation against Planned Parenthood and to prosecute any and all criminal violations by that organization. It is a federal offense, a felony, punishable by 10 years in jail to sell the body parts of unborn children for a profit. And that's what these senior officials have confessed to on these videos. It is only because we have a partisan Department of Justice they're not enforcing the laws. I will also reinstate the Reagan rules barring funding to Planned Parenthood across the board. Take a moment to highlight a fight that is coming in the next coming weeks in Congress. We're about to have a battle over funding Planned Parenthood. Now, President Obama has declared that if $500 million in taxpayer funding doesn't continue to go to this private organization that is under multiple criminal investigations for committing an ongoing pattern of felonies, that he will veto the entire federal budget. That is a radical and extreme position, and I'm sorry to tell you, Republican leadership has already preemptively surrendered. They've already said, under no circumstances will they allow a shutdown, which means that when Obama says, if you don't embrace my entire left-wing agenda, I'll shut the government down, Republican leaders respond and say, okay, we'll embrace and fund your entire left-wing agenda. That's not what we were elected to do. I'll tell you, I'm proud to be standing and fighting with Iowa's own Steve King, fighting to earn this fight. Republican leadership is not trying to defeat Obama. They're not trying to stop Planned Parenthood. They're trying to beat all of us. They're trying to pound all of us into submission. I would encourage every one of you, reach out to your elected officials and say, just do what you said you would do. And there's every reason to believe that the Iowa Planned Parenthood affiliate, Planned Parenthood of the Heartland, is wrapped up in this ongoing national criminal enterprise. I would encourage you to urge your state officials to open criminal investigations and to defund Planned Parenthood of the Heartland here in the state of Iowa.
The Second Amendment. Why do you believe the Founding Fathers produced the Second Amendment?
Okay, it is a wonderful question. The Founding Fathers were very explicit that the Second Amendment is a fundamental right of all men and women, and it is. There are lots of important aspects. We focus on things like sporting use, like hunting, we focus on things like self-defense. Self-defense gets closer to what the Second Amendment was about. The inherent natural right of every man and woman to protect your home, your family, your life. But the framers were explicit that none of that at the end of the day was the core purpose of the Second Amendment. The core purpose of the Second Amendment was to serve as a check on government tyranny that an armed citizen cannot be oppressed by. And I would be remiss if I didn't note, every Republican candidate running for president says they support the Second Amendment. Unless you are a blithering idiot. That's the right answer. But the scripture says you shall know them by their fruits. If someone really supports the Second Amendment, they will have a record of standing and fighting for it. When I was the Solicitor General in Texas, the chief lawyer for the state in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, I led a coalition of 31 states defending the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms before the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won a landmark 5-4 victory upholding that individual right. And for that reason, I was very honored in 2010 to receive the NRA's Carter Knight Freedom Fund Award given to a leading defender of the Second Amendment nationally each and every year. And I'll tell you, I'm particularly honored just a couple of weeks ago. Gun Owners of America endorsed my presidential campaign because they said Cruz is the single strongest advocate for the Second Amendment in the entire Republic.
National security in Israel. The President just turned a treaty into an executive agreement. What's your position on the so-called Iran deal, and how would the Cruz administration deal with the Middle East?
It is a terrific question. There's a reason why two of the things I intend to do on the first day focus on that. Let's start with Israel. This administration has been the most hostile and antagonistic administration in Israel in the history of this country. If I had suggested 6.5 years ago that the elected Prime Minister of Israel could come to America to address a joint session of Congress, and that the President of the United States would boycott the speech, the Vice President of the United States would boycott the speech, that every member of the Cabinet would boycott the speech, and indeed, the President would refuse even to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Mind you, this is the same President who's going to be meeting with the teenage Ahmed who made a clock in Texas. But he won't meet with the Prime Minister of Israel. That's exactly why I said on the first day we will begin to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Presidential candidates in both parties have said that. Many of them have made that promise. They don't end up doing it. Inevitably, they get to the White House and their teams tell them, well, gosh, if we do that, other folks in the Middle East will be really unhappy with us. Well, if you hadn't noticed, they're already pretty unhappy. is that when I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do exactly what I said I would do. And if I'm elected president, the United States of America will stand unapologetically and unequivocally alongside our friend and ally, the nation of Israel. Comes to this catastrophic Iran deal. For 3 years, I have been leading the opposition to this catastrophic Iran deal. Let me tell you what will happen if this deal goes into effect. 3 things will happen. Number 1, the Obama administration will become quite literally the world's leading financier of radical Islamic terrorism. Over $100 billion will go to the Ayatollah Khamenei. Billions of those dollars will go to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to the Houthis. Those jihadists will use those billions to murder Americans, to murder Israelis, to murder Europeans. Number 2, this deal abandons 4 American hostages in Iran, including Pastor Saeed Abedin, an American citizen sentenced to 8 years in prison in Iran for the crime of preaching the gospel. And number 3, most troubling, this deal will only accelerate Iran's acquiring nuclear weapons. Mind you, the Ayatollah Khamenei, there's a reason that Khamenei refers to Israel as the little Satan and America as the great Satan. In the midst of negotiating this deal, a senior Iranian general tweeted out that the annihilation of Israel is non-negotiable. Apparently, the Obama administration didn't have a problem with that. In the midst of negotiating this deal, the Iranian military set up a mock of a U.S. naval ship and did military exercises bombing a U.S. naval ship. Apparently, the administration didn't have a problem with that. In the midst of negotiating this agreement, the Ayatollah Khamenei, to the assembled masses of Iranians, led them in chanting, "Death to America," while they burned American and Israeli flags. You know, if history teaches anything, it is that if somebody tells you they want to kill you, believe them. The fight in the Senate against this catastrophic deal. If this deal goes through, it should have been a treaty. The president is ignoring the Constitution and ignoring federal law, and sadly, Congress is acquiescing. But if this deal goes through and I'm elected president, on day 1, we will rip that deal to shreds, and I will make unequivocally clear to the Ayatollah, either you stop your nuclear program, or we will stop it. You know, let me mention, we've seen now 2 debates. We have a terrific array of candidates, young, charismatic, talented. But I think we're starting to see a distinction. A distinction between campaign conservatives who talk a good game on the trail, but haven't walked the walk, and consistent conservatives, a consistent conservative who is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. With me, you know what you're going to get. You look on issue after issue. Have you noticed none of the candidates stand up and say, I'm a squishy establishment moderate. I stand for that. They don't say that. They run as us. Every one of them stands up there and says, I'm really one of those conservatives. But mind you, at the same time, they say, if you're actually one of us, you can't get elected. That's their argument. Scripture tells us you shall know them by their fruits. On issue after issue, what I would urge each of you to ask is don't listen to the campaign rhetoric. Ask what is your record. If you say you oppose Obamacare, when have you stood up and fought to stop it? If you say you oppose amnesty, a majority of the candidates on that stage have publicly advocated amnesty. I'm the only candidate on that stage who has consistently opposed amnesty and indeed who led the fight standing shoulder to shoulder with Steve King and Jeff Sessions to defeat amnesty in the United States Congress. When it comes to religious liberty, I think the fight in Indiana was a time for choosing. The fight with Kim Davis being jailed was a time for choosing. I'll tell you this, I stand unequivocally with Kim Davis. I flew to Kentucky and visited with Kim Davis in the jailhouse. She and I hugged, and I told her, I said, thank you. Thank you for standing up and inspiring millions. Your stand for faith is inspiring millions. And you are being lifted up in prayer by believers across the country and across the world. You may have thought you were alone in that jail cell, but let me tell you, you didn't realize just how proud you was. When it comes to religious liberty, it is a core passion of mine that I've spent 20 years fighting to defend. Indeed, just a few weeks ago, we held an incredible rally here in Iowa for religious liberty. We brought in 9 heroes who had stood for their faith and been persecuted, and they shared their stories. I got to tell you, it was an inspirational, uplifting event. It was powerful. I would encourage any of you, if you haven't seen it, go to our website, tedcruz.org, and the rally is there on the website. Listen to these stories. Your spirit will be uplifted at people standing for their faith in the face of persecution. The final thing I'll say is this. The men and women in this room have incredible authority and responsibility for this country. If conservatives unite, this primary is over. What Washington wants, what the Washington establishment wants is to divide conservatives. They want a chunk of conservatives over here, a chunk of evangelicals over here, a chunk of libertarians over here, a chunk of Tea Party folks over here. That's how a moderate establishment candidate runs up the middle with 23% of the vote, steals the nomination, and loses to Hillary Clinton in the House. If conservatives unite and speak in one voice, if we come together, this primary is over. So I'm here asking that you look to the proven records of each of these candidates and asking that you join us. We have an incredible grassroots army here on the ground in Iowa. And we have the opportunity. I'm convinced 2016 is going to be an election like 1980. That we will win by following Reagan's admonition of painting in bold colors and not pale pastels. And it took Jimmy Carter to give us Ronald Reagan. And with your help, for once, Republicans are going to nominate a candidate for president who is as committed to conservative values as Barack Obama is to liberal values.